Welcome everyone to Daf Yomi 1 week at a time, Masechet Chullin. Today is our 8th class, and we are going to be reviewing Daf 48 through 54. And we have a lot of pictures to go through today again. Thank you. I give full credit to all the pictures to Rabbi Eli Stefanski. His shiurim are on YouTube, and I think they have their own website, but the pictures are excellent. So I am going to, hold on 1 minute, share my screen, which I screenshotted from the shiurim. Okay. Done. Can everyone see the pictures? Okay, great. So we have been talking about cases that there is something wrong with an internal organ, and that makes the animal a treifah. Again, right? Treifah means that and we haven't discussed it fully yet, but the assumption is that it means that the animal will die within 12 months. So we actually mentioned this case of this picture last week, which is a lung that part of it dissolves. So that was, we discussed that last week, and if it's clear, then it actually is, okay. Today we're going to talk about on Daf 48, if the lung is connected to the wall. You can see here there are adhesions. So this is so if it's connected to the wall, it is still kosher. The animal is fine. But if there are boils or blisters on the lung, which usually means there's a hole, and therefore it is a treifah. Some say that the adhesions also make it a treifah, right? If you can separate it from the wall, so then it's fine. If not, again, because of the lung, it is a treifah. Okay. Here, this is talking about checking. Remember, we discussed when two lobes of the lung are connected with an adhesion. So you have to check if there is a hole actually underneath. Even if you can't find the hole, maybe we assume that there was a hole, and therefore it is a treifah. Again, here are the adhesions. So again, if there's a hole in the lung and it connects it to the wall, so then if the flesh seals up the hole, that's not this picture, sorry, but if the flesh seals up the hole, it is kosher. If not, if it's not connected well to the wall, then it would be a treifah. Okay, if the wall of the animal has a hole, okay, hold on, he actually has a picture of this. Here, this is like different areas of the lung. Here are these adhesions. Okay, here is a hole in the lung that is against the flesh. So you see the flesh actually seals off the hole, but the question is, what if there was a hole all the way through, right? And then that seems to make it into a treifah. Another is a picture of the gallbladder. And let's say it has a hole at the bottom of the liver. And, oh, I didn't get the other picture, sorry. So if there's a hole on the underside of the gallbladder where it touches, the truth is that anatomy, it's the opposite, meaning the liver, I guess doesn't matter, but the gallbladder is under the liver generally. But I think the point is that when the gallbladder is against the liver, if it covers it, so then it is kosher, because it is closing off the hole. Next, we have these blisters in the lung. If the blister has pus inside, that's the yellow goopy stuff, then it's a treifah. If it's clear liquid inside, then it is kosher. The Gemara says, well, maybe this is only maybe there's a difference if this blister is in the kidney or in the lung. Maybe in the lung, the blisters are always kosher. But it seems that not everyone was sure about this. And it is important, I didn't bring all of the stories, but it is important to realize, and I think this is very interesting in this Masechet, that the Gemara describes different rabbis and how, they weren't sure about it, so they asked a different rabbi. That rabbi wasn't sure, he asked a different rabbi, right? There seems to be this, it's not so clear what makes the animal kosher, what makes the animal charef, like a treifah. And it seems that, it's very clear that you needed to be an expert in this field, and not everybody was. And therefore, there are a lot of stories of people not knowing what the answer is, and thereby sending it to the expert, either the expert in that town or the expert in a different town. So I didn't bring you all of those stories, but just be aware that there are a lot of these stories of the sages not knowing if a certain defect was kosher or not kosher. Okay, the next thing is... the next thing we're going to talk about is a needle that goes through, here are different blisters. There's a discussion about different blisters and what they look like. Now that we're going to have, let me go, hold on, I'm going to go here. Okay, we'll start with this. There is, again, don't forget, these, animals are grazing in pastures, and who knows what's on the floor. And basically, these animals eat anything that they can find. What happens if they swallow a needle? Now, a needle is sharp, and a needle makes holes. So the Gemara talks about a needle in the lung. Some say that it is okay and doesn't matter, and some people say no, it's a treifah. So the machloket is if it takes away, right? If there's a chisaron, if there's something chaser, something missing on the inside of the animal, is it considered chaser or not? So the Gemara says, no, that's not the machloket. Rather, the machloket is, how did the needle get to the lungs? Okay, so here he had a whole video, which was very cute, but there's two ways that the needle can get into the lungs. This is the simple way, right? The animal inhales the needle, it goes down the trachea and then into the lungs. That's option number one. Option number two is it actually swallows the needle. The needle goes into the stomach, and then from the stomach, because again, it's sharp. So it goes through into and gets lodged into the lung. So the question, basically, and what's the point? If it's inhaled and it goes into the lung through the respiratory system, then it means it didn't make any holes on the way. Obviously at the end it does, but everything else did not have any holes in it, and that would make it less problematic. But if it went through the the digestive tract, it for sure made holes, right, in the intestines, in the stomach, in the in the diaphragm, in different areas, and that would be problematic. So again, was there a hole made or not? So we say that you need to see the whole lung, and you see if the needle came from the outside and made a hole into the lung, or did it come from the inside? But then the Gemara says, wait a minute, it really, right? So here's another picture. Needles were metal. Needles were always metal. It's a good question. Needles were always metal. I don't know if they looked exactly like this, but they were always metal. Generally, I think. Yeah, because the Gemara talks about putting it in a mikvah, so it must be needle. It must be metal. Here you can see here at the bottom corner, you see the needle inside, right? So it could have come through again. It could have come from the inside. It could have come from the outside, and. Hold on, let me see if I have more pictures. Here's another picture. You can see the needle, right? It can go through the bronchi, right? Let's say there's a needle in the primary bronchi. So then here's another case where the rabbi said, okay, it's not kosher, but it's not kosher, because again, it's problematic. They weren't sure how it got there. What about a needle in the liver? The Gemara says that's fine, right? Now, again, because there's a difference between the liver and the here's the liver, and then the question is, right, is it facing right? How is the needle facing? Right? That's the question. So it says that if the head of the needle faces out, then it means that it was swallowed, it went into the intestines, and then through the intestines into the liver, and therefore it's a treifah. But if the head of the needle is inside, so then it means that it was inhaled through the trachea and then went through the bronchi into the vascular system and then into the liver, and therefore it didn't really make any holes, and therefore it is kosher. The Gemara says this is only for thick needles. Again, if it's thin, it doesn't matter. Maybe it came through the digestive tract, and therefore it is a treifah. Okay, daf 49. Let's say there's a needle in one of the stomachs. Again, there are 4 stomachs in the cow. So if there's a needle in the reticulum, which is called the beta kosot, because of food in the stomach, it could have pushed the needle head into the wall. Therefore, it doesn't matter which way it's facing, but that would be different than the liver. Again, nothing would push it in or out of the liver, as opposed to in the intestines. Now the Gemara talks about a date pit and an olive pit. And it says, let's say there was a date pit that was found in the gallbladder. So the Gemara says it's for sure from the trachea, and therefore it is not a treifah. But if it's an olive pit, which is sharp on the edge, so then it was probably swallowed, and then it made a hole in the intestines, and then it came into the gallbladder, and therefore it is a treifah. Okay, now the Gemara tells us, we're taking a break from pictures for a minute. The Gemara tells us that a lung is called the re'ah. In Hebrew, re'ah is lung, but from lirot, to see. So the Gemara says, because if you eat the lungs, it brightens up your eyes. Okay, then the Gemara talks about when a butcher touches the lungs, it could be that when he removed it, he punctured the lung with his finger. Therefore, if you find a hole and you can attribute it to where the butcher would have pushed on it, we could say that it is not a treifah. Another opinion is no, you cannot attribute it to the butcher. Okay, let's say you see a worm coming out of the lungs. The question is, did it come out before or after shechita? Again, did it make a hole? If there was a hole there before shechita, the animal would be a treifah. If it's after shechita, it would be kosher. So the Gemara says, no, the law is that we say that it is after shechita, therefore it is kosher. Now, the fourth stomach of the animal is called the keva, and the fat on it is permitted to eat. We will learn more about this later on, but we're going to learn that there are certain fats in the animal that are permitted and some are prohibited. So we're going to learn about these different fats later on, but here since we're talking about different organs, then we're going to speak about the covering or the fats around these organs. And then the Gemara says that the Kohanim, the priests, used to eat these fats. And since we're talking about the Kohanim, the Gemara brings up the blessing of the Kohanim, where it says, the verse says, Ko tivarchu et bnei Yisrael, right? God says this is how you should bless the Jewish people, right? So the Kohanim, the priests, bless the Jews, and then it says ve'ani avarachem, right? That God says, you're going to bless the Jews, and then I am going to bless you. Right here is the source that God is going to bless the Kohanim after the Kohanim bless the people. Okay. Now, the fats that are brought on the altar, there are certain ones that cannot be eaten, right? The ones that are put on the altar cannot be eaten. Now, again, all fats of in an animal, again, including on the small intestines. This seems to be saying that the fat on the keva, on the fourth stomach, is mutar, it is kosher. Others say it is not. The fats on the kiva have a membrane, but they could be peeled away, therefore they cannot be eaten, or they actually can be eaten. Now, if the kosher fat can seal up a hole in the stomach, so then the animal would be kosher. But non-kosher fats that seal up a hole the animal would still be a treifah. Okay, so then the Gemara tells us that in general, the Torah is concerned for the expenses, for the money that the Jews need to spend on certain things, and therefore, right, are we going to be more lenient when declaring an animal kosher versus treifah, meaning not kosher? And then the Gemara brings other tangential cases where we have a doubt, right, a safek, and the Gemara tells us that because of the financial burden that this doubt could bring, we are going to be more lenient. And the Gemara brings certain different cases, one about leprosy, about sarat, and one about honey that was left uncovered overnight. But they bring a case to show that the Torah cares about saving us from expenses. Okay, then hold on one second. I think we have another picture. Okay, here's the fats that is around the heart, and again, some say that this fat can seal. Right, there's the fat around the rectum and the fat around the heart. One of them can seal things, and one of them cannot. On Daf 50, it says that in Israel, they would eat this type of fat, but in Bavel, they wouldn't. Again, this idea of being more lenient versus being more stringent when it comes to a kashrut. The next one is the fat around the another one of the stomachs, and here there is a machloket. You can see basically it's shaped like a U or like a bow, and they say that the fat above it is there's a machloket if it's kosher or not, but below it, everybody agrees that it is forbidden, or the one above is for sure okay, and there's a machloket about the one below. And again, there are these stories of different sages in Israel that would eat this type of fat. Okay, the next discussion is a hole in the small intestines. You can look and see at the bottom, it has like a liquid coming out, and the liquid is sealing the hole. So Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel says that this would be kosher. It's not a treifah. Okay. Sorry, one second. Okay. Um, so let's say you find this hole so we'll go back to the intestines for 1 minute. Let's say you find this hole in the intestines. Now, we need to determine, again, not this one, which is closed, but a regular hole in the intestines. We want to determine if this hole was made before shchita or after shchita. So you can make a hole in another section of the intestines to determine if the hole that you found was made before or after, right? Because it's going to look a certain way. And then the Gemara says that you can also do this with the lung, right? So we're going to check on the same the same lobe, what the hole would look like, and the same level in terms of where it is. And here the Gemara even shows that we compare, we would say apples to apples, right? You compare the upper lobe with the upper lobe, or right, certain areas specifically, and you make a hole in the parallel place, and if it looks the same, then we can assume it only happened after shchita and not before. The same thing with the trachea, that if there's a hole in the trachea, you can make another hole, either like in the same ring or in a similar ring, but you cannot you cannot compare the hole, let's say, on the ring with a hole in between the rings. Then the Gemara is going to speak about the rectum, that if there's a hole in the rectum, it's still kosher, because, and here they did kind of a backside view, but the hips or the pelvis holds the rectum together, and therefore, even if there's a hole in the rectum, nothing is going to come out because of its the way it's situated in the animal. Okay, here is Again, another picture of all the stomachs. And before, with the rectum also, if more than a majority is ripped of the rectum, so then it's a treifah. If less, then it is okay. Sorry. Okay, here are the different stomachs. So we have the first stomach is the teres, and then wait, hold on a second. Okay, yeah, each one looks a little bit different, and then again, the question is where there are issues, right? So here are the 4 different stomachs, and okay, there's like a narrow place, and then it goes down, and you can see also that each stomach has like a different texture, and that's how you determine what area you are in order to determine what part you are looking at. Okay, hold on one second. Then the Gemara discusses the, wait 1 minute, I'll show you. Okay, the hole. If there is a hole the size of a sela, right? A sela is a coin. If there's a hole the size of a sela, so then it is a treifah. This is in the stomach. Why? Because if you pull it out, it actually and then stretch it, it would be the size of a tefach, or maybe it has to be more than a sela for it to be a treifah. But if it's exactly a sela, maybe it would be kosher. Okay, then you have the stomach 2 and 3, Beit HaKosot and the Hemses. If there's a needle in the wall of the, here's the Beit HaKosot, right? It looks like little cups. So if you see a needle in here, so then if it doesn't go out, right, if it's just in the first layer but doesn't go out further, so then it's kosher. If it goes through both layers, then it is a treifah. But if you find blood, so then again, that seems to imply that it happened before shchita, and therefore it is a treifah. And if not, if there's no blood, then it probably happened after shchita, and therefore it is kasher. Okay, we could take a break for a few minutes of the pictures and we'll come back to this in a minute. Daf 51. We said if there's a scab over a wound, so then you know that the wound is at least 3 days earlier than or before the shchita, because it already had time to become a scab, right? This is important in terms of a sale of the animal. If there's no scab, then you know that it happened within 3 days of the shchita, and the burden of proof is on the person who wants to be paid, right? This is a very famous principle which we learned a long time ago. In Hebrew, the principle is called hamotzi michavero. If you want to extract payment, alav haraya, right? The burden of proof is on you if you want the person to pay you. Now there's a story about Rabbi Akiva who came from Israel to Bavel, to Abaye. Sorry, not Rabbi Akiva, Rav Avira. I was like, that doesn't make sense that Rabbi Akiva would not be going to Bavel. Sorry, Rav Avi, somebody else went from Israel to Bavel, and he comes to Abaye, and he tells him that Rebbe in Israel declared that a needle that is in the Beit HaKosot, in the stomach, the reticulum, it would be a treifah. because he saw a spot of blood on the outside of the stomach. So they say, okay, that's not really a big chidush. It's not a novel idea, but okay, next, so that's it for the needles. Now we're going to talk about an animal who falls from the roof. Okay, so the question is, maybe it disrupted its internal organs, and therefore it would be a treifah. And if, let's say you left an animal on the roof and then you came back and it was on the floor, you do not have to assume that it fell, right? You know that animals can jump, animals can climb, and therefore it is not a treifah. If the animal jumped, also, if it was intentional, not a treifah. And if you, okay, so that's that. If you saw an animal dragging its back leg, you can say, oh, maybe it has a cramp. You don't need to suspect a spinal injury, and therefore, it is not a treifah. I didn't realize that cramps were common in animals, but the Gemara says that it is, and therefore the animal is kosher. The Gemara talks about rams that like butt their heads with their other friends. So even if they crack their skull, you don't, or sorry, even though they butt their heads a lot, you don't need to suspect that it is a treifah, that they cracked it open. There's a story about these thieves that used to steal rams, and how would they steal it? So one person would go inside the pen, is it called a pen, where the animals are, and the other person would stand outside and they would throw the rams over the wall. So the Gemara says you don't need to suspect that, the animal got banged up, because the thieves are going to be very careful because they want to have healthy animals, so they're going to be careful. But if they return the animals, and then they throw them over the fence, then you have to suspect that they were not careful. And that's only if they are returning it because they're afraid they're going to get caught. But if they're returning it because they feel remorse, and it's because they did repented, they repented, they did tshuva, so then you don't have to suspect. We can assume that they're going to be careful. Okay, if you hit an animal on the back, you do not need to suspect that it is a treifah. But if there are like knots in the stick, then you do need to be concerned, right? Maybe the animal will get a spinal injury. Okay, the Gemara tells us that the process of birth, meaning when the animal comes out, it does not make the newborn animal a treifah. So, right, otherwise it would be, otherwise it would be a problem. Okay, if the hold on a second. Right, if the animal just gets up and walks around, so then it would not be called a it would not be considered a treifah. Okay, when the shochet pull the butcher or the person who is slaughtering the animal, when he pushes the animal down to slaughter it, we do not have to be concerned that he is damaging the animal. Otherwise, it would be extremely counterproductive because he's trying to make kosher meat. Okay, if the one second. Okay, back to animals that fall. Okay, so if an animal fell down, you only need to check its abdomen, or maybe you have to check the entire body cavity, right? You do not have to check the simanim, the neck, because they generally do not get injured from a fall. What about birds, right? So now the Gemara discusses birds. What if a bird hit the surface of the water, not intentionally, right? If they're intentional, then obviously they're fine. But if, let's say, they fall and they hit the water, if the bird can like swim around, so then it's not a treifah. But if not, then we suspect that it is a treifah, right? If the bird falls onto a taut sheet, we should be concerned that maybe it was injured. If it's loose, then we don't have to be concerned. If it flew into a net, right? So if there are a lot of knots that are close together, we have to suspect that maybe it is a treifah. If it falls onto a hard surface, we have to suspect. If it's a soft surface, we do not need to suspect. Okay, daf 52, right? Again, if it falls on soft sand, you don't have to suspect. Hard, you do, right? And then different like other surfaces. What if it fell onto like a glue trap? So if one wing is stuck, so then it's okay. If it's two wings, then it is a treifah. Okay, let's do some more pictures. We took a break from pictures for a minute. Okay, done. Okay, let's talk about
Rabbanit. Why is two wings treifah and one wing not?
the idea is that the animal can probably still fly with one wing attached, but two wings it cannot fly, and therefore it's gonna like, it's going to injure itself, or it is injured, and therefore it is probably a treifah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's talk about broken ribs. So it says that if a majority of the ribs are broken, so here you can see there are 11 on each side. So what is a majority? So the Gemara says it needs to be 6 on one side, and 6 on each side, which is 12, or all 11 on one side plus 1 on the other. And it has to be the top part of the rib, meaning where it is connected to the spine. Let's say a rib was dislocated, so then you only need 6 for it to be a treifah. But if it broke, you need 6 on each side. If the rib and the vertebra are dislocated, did I give you a picture? Oh, here. You can see like 6 and 6. We'll get to that in a second. So 6 and 6. So if the rib and the vertebra, again, the ribs are attached to the vertebra. If the rib and the vertebra are dislocated, it's a treifah, because we're going to assume that there's spinal injury. If the rib, plus the vertebra plus the other rib, that's a nevela, like that's for sure, like dead. And again, what does it mean dislocated? Here, so we have a picture, right? It means like the rib is uprooted, right? It's like taken out of its place, but not the vertebra. Okay. Sorry, it's been a long day. Hold on 1 minute. All right. Now, also I wanted to show you, right, the lower vertebra, so they actually do not have ribs attached to them, right? The things that are on the sides are actually part of the spine, and therefore those are not ribs, basically. Okay, if the majority of the skull was crushed, then it would be a treifah. The Gemara discusses what does it mean, a majority, either the majority of the height or the majority of the circumference. The flesh that covers the keres, again, the bottom of the animal, if it's torn or removed, that is problematic. Okay, the next topic is what's called drisa. Drisa means that an animal was clawed, right? Clawed, sorry, not clawed, the AI, clawed by a wild animal. So if it's clawed by a wolf, the assumption was it has some sort of poison, what we would call nowadays bacteria, and therefore it would cause the animal to become a treifah. Now, if it's a bird, so then if it's a nitz, which is a what's the word? Predatory bird, or bigger than that. So that would make a treifah. If it's smaller than that, it would not make a treifah. The Gemara says a wolf, even if it attacked a small animal, it would also make it a treifah. Right, a cat or a marten, if they attacked a lamb, we assume the lamb is a treifah. If it's if a weasel clawed a bird, it would also be a treifah, right? These animals were seen as causing animals to become a treifah. Okay, so this nitz, which is a big bird, if it clawed another bird, that bird is a treifah. But if it attacked a lamb, it would not be a treifah, right? Meaning you have to keep it parallel, bird to bird, or again, like based on the size as well. If no one tried to save the animal, then the animal is actually not a treifah. But if they did try to save it, so then it would be a treifah, right? The idea is that it makes the animal angrier, and if it's angrier, that's when the poison goes into the animal. If the animal tries to save itself, it's as if someone else was trying to save it, and therefore it would be a treifah as well. Okay, so then the Gemara discusses what animal would make a different animal, a treifah, right, a cat or a weasel. Again, we're discussing the size of the victim and the size of the predator. And the Gemara goes through different animals that would make an animal a treifah. So here, sorry, one second. This is a great picture. He actually had a real video of this. Looks like a jaguar chasing a deer. And basically the Gemara says that a drusa, this clawed animal, is only if it's from the front legs, meaning right the front legs, and its claws, but not from the hind legs and not from the mouth, meaning again, those parts could damage the animal, but here we're talking about even if it's a surface wound, if it's from the claw, the front claw, that seems to make the animal a treifah, and everything else would not. And the Gemara says that actually that a majority of lions do attack these animals. Right here, there's a case that if you found a claw in the back of an ox, you don't have to suspect that it was clawed by the animal. Rather, it could have come from the wall, meaning the lion scratched a wall and maybe lost a claw, and then the ox came to the wall and rubbed against it, and the claw went into the animal. Okay. Now, the Gemara then discusses some animal psychology, right? So if a lion went into a pen with other animals and then it just sat there and didn't do anything, we don't have to assume that the animals are a treifah. But if, the lion is making noise and the oxen are making noise, then we have to assume it is a treifah. Then there's a story that someone brought a basket of suspected treifah birds to Rav, and he wasn't sure. Again, this idea of not being sure. And he sent it to Shmuel, and then Shmuel strangled each bird and then threw them into the river. So again, it seems to be saying that they're all not kosher, and he didn't want someone to find it and eat it by accident. Then we say that we have to, again, check the intestine area for this poison, because that's where it's very sensitive. If it was clawed in the leg, so then it is not a treifah. But if the flesh started decaying, then we look at it as if the leg isn't there, and if that would make it a treifah, so then this would be a treifah as well. If you have pieces of the lung that are falling off when you pick it up, that would be called decay, and therefore it would be a treifah. Again, the drusa, when there's a flesh around the organ, if it becomes red, so then it becomes, then it is a treifah. Okay, daf 54, that we said you need to check the animal, the area where it was clawed. So you need to check the area of the internal organs, which you can see here at the bottom. Another right, so that shows you, right, all of the whole area. Another opinion is no, you have to check all the way till the head, or till the brain. Okay. Then we have, okay, let's go. We say that we do not add to the number of treifot. Okay, the next Mishnah has the following animals are kosher, right? Remember, we had the first Mishnah were all the animals that were a treifah, meaning not kosher. So now we're going to tell you the following things on an animal are kosher. So if there's a hole in the trachea or a slit in the trachea, it could be missing up to an isar, right? An isar is a coin. Smaller than that, it would be kosher. Obviously bigger, it is not kosher, it's a treifah. If the skull is broken, but the membrane around the brain is whole, so then that's kosher. A hole in the heart, but it doesn't get all the way through to the chamber. A broken spine, but the spinal cord is whole. If the liver is missing, but there's at least a kazayit there. If number 2 or 3 stomachs are punctured, one into the other, or the spleen, or the kidney, or the lower jaw, or the womb were removed, all of these things are kosher. And if the liver shriveled due to illness, also kosher. And if you flayed the animal, it would be kosher, or maybe not. Okay, so now the Gemara says, again, we just had 2 lists. One list is what makes the animal not kosher. One list is what makes the animal kosher. So the question is, when we make this list, is it only the things on the list and nothing else? Or it could include other things as well, right? And again, we have 2 different lists, kosher and not kosher. If the femur was dislocated completely, Now that isn't on either list. So the question is it kosher or is it a treifah, right? Maybe it's a treifah because the list isn't exhaustive, right? And because of that, it says this is the rule, and that includes other things. If the ligament is also severed in the hip, so then it's a treifah, or maybe it is also kosher. Okay, then the Gemara discusses the Isar, and the Italian Isar is equal in size to the Cordian dinar, and they would like search for the size of the hole. There's a story about a money changer who wanted to stand up for Rabbi Yochanan, and he told him to sit down, and he didn't have to stop working because of him. And then the Gemara says, well, wait a minute, we stand up for the people who bring bikurim, the first fruit in Jerusalem. The Gemara says, you're right, there's a difference, right? Maybe it's the same, and therefore you have to stand up, or no, we stand up for the bikurim because we want to encourage them to come again next year. But sages, you don't have to stand up for if you're in the middle of doing work. And then the Gemara concludes discussing the size. We said it's an isar, and then the question is up to an isar or including the size of an isar. And the Gemara says that it is we'll see more next week, but it's a machloket if it is including that size or not including that size. And with that, we finished for this week. I'm exhausted. Your turn. Oh, yes. Ilanit mentioned that Rabbi Stefanski blew into the lungs. I actually, the rabbi that we used to study with, that we still study with, is Rav Weitman, and 2 cycles ago, so it was already a long time ago, he brought us to our class the lungs of I want to say it was either a sheep or a goat, and he blew into it, and it expanded. It was actually very cool. It was very cool to see. Okay, who has some questions? Yes.
I have a question.
Yes.
I'm trying to figure out, is there a thread in these decisions about all these little, like thinking of a human body, like adhesions, boils, blebs, that makes sense to me. But then you said an inflamed liver, no? And I'm also with the holes. I mean, I understand like holes from like trauma, and I still can't understand how you can inhale a needle. Is there some sort of an underlying thread that holds all this
Yes.
together?
Yes, excellent question. And we will mention it, but if I didn't mention it before, the underlying theme is an injury that is life threatening. Again, not immediately life threatening, but life threatening. Will make an animal a treifah, and an injury that is not life-threatening will not make an animal a treifah. That is the underlying principle, which is why, right, a hole in the lung we can understand is life-threatening, whereas a hole in other internal organs, again, depending what they are, yes, they might leak things into our body, but it's not the same thing as a hole in the lung. Right. So
Okay.
that's basically the overarching theme. Again, one could say that certain things are more problematic than others, but that's what the rabbis were trying to determine.
Okay, thank you, Rabbanit.
My pleasure. Wait, Leah, can you introduce yourself for a minute? Where are you from?
Oh, I live in Arnona.
Okay.
And I was trying. I don't know how to turn on the camera. Sorry, I live in
Okay.
Arnona. And not too far away from you. I was telling Lizette that I was exhausted, and she said she wasn't because she's in Arizona. And I said, well, I was because it's really late here, and that's why
Yes.
you're always yawning, and it makes me yawn too. But
Exactly. Sorry.
no,
I did
it's
want to say, I didn't mention before, but we actually had a grandson this
Mazal
last week.
tov.
Mazal
So Brit
Tov.
Mila was this week. So I just wanted to share that with you.
Yeah,
Mazal
that's
Tov.
nice.
Yes.
Mazal Tov.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Ilanit.
Yeah, I used to. It's been many years, so I don't remember it that well. But I used to love to watch this veterinary show where they would go and take care of large livestock, etc. And they used to go to the dairy cattle. And there was they always had a problem where the dairy cattle might get one of their stomachs twisted. They would gain a lot of gas. It was quite a crisis. They would come out, they would throw that cow on one side, and then they would go and just, puncture that stomach, and all the gas would come out. And then they would take a big, huge, hooked kind of item and go right through the outside to just pull the lining of that stomach to fix it. And then everything was great, and the cow is up, and everybody's happy, and they just love that procedure. And then I heard years later a rabbi commentary from somewhere that wasn't discussing that show, but just talking about taking care of dairy cattle, and saying that these sorts of procedures are sometimes done, and saying that would be render the milk of that cow forever unusable and unkosher. Does that make sense to you?
Wow.
Yeah. Very interesting.
That does make sense.
So I don't know what they do then for the kosher dairy cattle that get in that trouble, but I guess they could not do that procedure.
Yeah. Good point. Wait, just want to say mazal tov to my mother-in-law, who is now a great-grandmother. Okay.
Mazal Tov. Mazal Tov.
Me too.
Okay. Back to and welcome back. Okay. What? Any other questions on animals and their injuries? Yes, Aliza.
It may just be me, but this one takes the cake. This was the most difficult one I've ever.
You say that every week, Aliza.
You
say it every week.
No, it was pretty gruesome.
Sorry, it's a lot. This perek, this chapter is famously very
Intricate.
Good. I was going to say confusing, but it's not really confusing. It's a lot of information. And thank you again, Leah, for bringing it up. The idea is that we're trying to determine what is putting the animal at risk. So we're really going through every part of the animal's body to really determine what would make the animal die, not die. Did the injury happen before death, after death? So it is a very intricate chapter. Yes.
And how do the rabbis actually know how something is gored or killed? They weren't there for the original attack. It's
a great question. Again, that's why I think, as I mentioned before, there is, I don't want to say a lot of confusion, but when we talk about the laws of Shabbat, right? Everyone seemed to know. Again, there were different opinions, but everyone had an opinion. When we get to this topic, not everyone has an opinion because people just don't know. Again, I think you need, and we mentioned this in the beginning of the Masechet, you needed to be an expert. If you were not an expert, you wouldn't know. You don't know what the inside of an animal looks like. You don't know. And I think that there were people who were just experts, and you can watch. I mean, now a lot of people are talking about it because we're learning it. There are a lot of videos of like these shochtim, these slaughterers who go out. This is something they do all day, every day. They know what they're talking about. They know their animal anatomy. They know what to look for. But I think your average rabbi does not know. So.
And just think about the decomposition of the animal while all this conversation is going on. When they're all done, it's going to be useless anyway.
It seems to have been done quickly.
Yeah, it should have done quickly.
Doesn't this also explain some of like the issues of like Mahadran and super glot and regular
Exactly.
Rabbanit and everything? Like,
Yeah.
I guess how carefully they're measuring all those little holes.
Yes. Yeah. We'll discuss it more as we continue in this Masechet.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you, Rabbi, for
Thank you,
sticking it out.
Rabbanit. Thank you.
And that's why you should always get your dairy products supervised by Jews. They will have dealt with these kinds of problems with dairy cows.
Yes. Yes.
I guess that's true. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you,
All right.
Rabbanit,
Thank you,
so much.
Rabbanit.
Everyone.
Mazel
Bye.
tov.
Get your rest.
Yeah, Mazal
Yes,
Tov.
Mazel Tov.
Mazel tov.